Welcome, everyone. Welcome. This is Benjamin Beaver. Let me stop that music so I can actually talk to you. There we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Connection versus Collision, the black and white conversation. We are so happy that you are here, and we are going to take the next hour and go through a discussion that might be kind of uncomfortable at some points. But as Coach Boyd says a lot, we got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And before we jump into our conversation, I'm excited to just say and thank our premier sponsors this year from 2020 to 2021. PEGS Foundation, huge part of putting this together, as well as Cap Trust. And learn more about them, just Google them, like we all do. And then we can learn all about them. It'd be great. Now, I am excited for you to get to do this. And this is, I was just texting with Miss Lori, my friend with Love Akron, and I said, hey, I get to be the only white face on this entire call. And I love it, man, because by all means, I'm not going to say I understand. She was telling me, she's like, Ben, don't say that whole ignorant white male thing you say all the time. You're getting too smart, Ben. You're getting too smart for this. But I'm learning a bunch, and I am so excited. We got some great guests, great things going on, and I'm going to turn this over to my coach, my buddy, my friend, looking good over there in the hood. Wow, that was a real white thing to say. It's just like Bishop always says, man, when you're trying not to sound racist, the white guy sounds. Anyways, over to you, Coach Kemp.
Hey, thank you so much, Ben. Good afternoon, everyone. Can everybody hear me well? Yep. Just excited to bring you another episode of Connection versus Collision, the black-white conversation. And we teased this last month with talking about the importance of lament. But before we can lament together, we have to understand what it means to feel together. I'm excited to have our panelists with us again. So I want to introduce them. We have Jocelyn Grant coming from South Street Ministries. We have Pastor Robert DeJeanette, pastor of St. Ashworth Temple, and also he is the diversity inclusion officer over at Akron Chamber. And last but definitely not least is Bishop Johnson from House of the Lord, who has been with us, man, probably throughout most of these episodes, just continue to educate us and feed us in. And so as we do with every episode, we always want to start with a video clip that we want to show to help to bring the essence of what we're going to be talking about today. So Ben, if you can run that clip for us, I'd appreciate it.
What stands out to me is just watching the Republican convention, and they're spewing this fear, right? Like, all you hear is Donald Trump and all of them talking about fear. We're the ones getting killed. We're the ones getting shot. We're the ones that we're denied to live in certain communities. We've been hung, we've been shot, and all you do is keep hearing about fear. It's amazing to me why we keep loving this country, and this country does not love us back. And it's really so sad. Like, I should just be a coach. And it's so often reminded of my color. You know, it's just really sad. We got to do better. But we got to demand better. Like, we got, you know, it's funny. We protest, and they send riot guards, right? They send people in riot outfits. They go to Michigan with guns, and they're spitting on cops, and nothing happens. The training has to change in the police force. The unions have to be taken down in the police force. My dad was a cop. I believe in good cops. We're not trying to defund the police and take all their money away. We're trying to get them to protect us. just like they protect everybody else. I didn't want to talk about it before the game because it's so hard. Like, to just keep watching it. That video, if you watch that video, you don't need to be black to be outraged. You need to be American and outraged. And how dare the Republicans talk about fear? We're the ones that need to be scared. We're the ones having to talk to every black child. What white father has to give his son a talk about being careful if you get pulled over? It's just ridiculous. And it just keeps going. There's no charges. Breonna Taylor, no charges, nothing. All we're asking is you live up to the Constitution. That's all we're asking for everybody, for everyone. Thank you.
So let's get right into this. Bishop Johnson, what was happening right there with Doc Rivers?
Well, what you see is a lament. He's verbalizing the pain that he's experiencing, but not only his pain, but a pain that is common for many African Americans. And so in verbalizing that pain, that lament is the verbalization, the vocalization of pain, of suffering. It's the voice and the verbalization of against the status quo. It's the voice of exiles. And what he did is it really began to resonate. I think people they really heard him. And I don't want to make this a sports show, but I think that's why they lost the NBA championship, why they couldn't get where they needed to go. Because after he said that, it was just like they couldn't get together. They couldn't, because it really resonated at a deep, deep soul level, what was going on. So I think that's one of the most powerful examples of lament that I've seen recently in our society.
And Pastor Robert, I want to ask you, why is this concept of lament, why is that important for us?
Well, I think it's important for us because it's just time for us to speak our truth, and speak it in a way that is going to resonate with those who we have influence with. Because, after seeing that video several times, I still get a bit choked up every time I look at it and listen to it, because it reminds me of what I have to go through on a day-to-day basis now, ever since the George Floyd incident, and how the circles that I'm in, I have to and feel really compelled to speak my truth from the heart, but do it in a way that is heartfelt. Try not to let the anger really come out, but the emotional part, because it's really emotional when you can put yourself in that place and what you're feeling, and you're speaking from conviction, and you're speaking from experience. So it's important for us to really start authentically with our lamenting, and not only that, but have those others who don't look like us lament with us.
And Jocelyn, let me go to you for one second, because I think Pastor Robert said something that was important here. He talked about us being able to express or to give our feelings. And how is that expression sometimes, how could what we just watched, Jocelyn, be misinterpreted?
I think sometimes misinterpretation happens because people think that African-American people are whining, that we are complaining about being mistreated, and it's actually not true, because it is an experience that those folks have not had. And so because they don't see it, don't believe that it's there. And that's at least one way that I see it misinterpreted often in my personal life, but also on large platforms like Doc has. because, I think that America is so individualized, and that was intentionally done. But America is so polarized and individualized that if it doesn't rest at my front door, if it doesn't land at my front door, it doesn't matter to me. So when if I'm a person who has not had this experience before, my understanding is you're complaining or you're crying about something, about having to follow the rules. The problem is the rules were not made for people who look like me. They were made to control people who look like me. Then when he spoke about the Constitution, I'm also thinking about where it says, all men are created equal. I'll go back to something I said a long time ago with Love Akron, is that there are some people who still don't believe that I'm a human being. So they don't consider this to be something, a right that I should have because I'm not quite like them. So they believe. So when you have someone who misinterprets something that something like what Doc has said, it's really founded in some deep-seated, I don't want to say misunderstandings, because there's not a misunderstanding of what they believe, but I would say false understandings of, I don't really have to treat these type of people. I don't have to treat them a certain kind of way because they're really not like me. And so those are the things that we have to dig up, uproot, so that they can die, so that people understand we're really more alike than we are different.
Okay, appreciate that. Now, Bishop, I want to come back to you because I think Jocelyn said something that I heard you talk about this morning when we were together, is this concept of if it's almost not only were we oppressed as a people, but even emotionally, we've been oppressed, correct? To where the misinterpretation of what Jocelyn's saying, can you explain to us kind of how that is, how that's coming out to where we're unable to lament in this way?
I'll try to help. Sister Jocelyn, how you doing? Because African American people for the longest have been considered animals and not people, our emotions have been treated as if there was something was wrong, that our anger, people are afraid of our anger. If somebody has passion, it's passion for them. It's anger for me. Right. They're just really, they have a really heartfelt feeling about but if I do it, it's like I'm scared. And one of the things I've tried to help people understand is that uncomfortability is not necessarily danger. Some people feel they're in danger. When you talk to African Americans. Am I going to kill somebody or hit somebody? Or let me just go ahead and say, as passionate as I have been, I have never hit anyone. So you're not in any danger, but you are at a level of uncomfortability. And something that Sister Jocelyn said, I just want to hit on. Doc did a lament, but the lament was corporate. He kept using the word we, and America almost has no corporate response to what's taking place. It's an individualistic response. It's a radical individual response. I'm so sorry for you. I'm so sorry for what you're going. It ain't just what I'm going through. It's what the entire country is going through. It's what all of African Americans are going through. And we need to go back to the beginning of this country. When you read about lament, Coach, in the Bible, it is not only individual lament, but the corporate lament of what happened to Jerusalem, what happened to the temple, what happened to the country, which then is verbalized for everyone. Well, in America, we can't lament because we haven't even acknowledged the damage of slavery, the damage of Jim Crow, the damage of hyper-ghettoization, the damage of prison fare. So if we were human, and we would go to the Bible, since we're, there's some Bible people on here, and somewhere around Romans 12:15, weep with those who weep, rejoice with those who rejoice, and we would weep with me rather than being afraid of me. That might make a difference.
Yeah.
So, Pastor Robert, I want you to pick up from there, right? I mean, you're an African American man. You're a leader in our community. You're passionate, and how often do you have to be apologetic for that passion?
I'm not apologetic. I'm not apologetic. um, because really for me, I'm really just starting to I feel really called to really speak my truth like I haven't before, because prior to all the social unrest, racial injustice, I would pick my battles and know when and what and how, but now I feel like every one of them is my battle, because I feel I'm in a position where I'm among those who don't look like me, like Sister Jocelyn said, where rules were not made for me in the corporate arena to advance. And, every time I'm called upon to express how I feel, it pulls something else out of me, because I go all the way back to when I started my career and was passed over for positions I knew I was qualified for, until it took someone to really open the door for me that didn't look like me. Then I began to advance. But what I found out, though, is that the circles I'm in, they don't look at me as the average Black male. That's just Robert. It's like, no, I'm Robert, but I'm Black Robert with the Black son that experience prejudice and oppression and profiling, and so now I'm really voicing that, but what really takes it out of me is that I'm really trying to voice it where the anger and emotion don't come out, but the trueness of who I am, who they have seen me to be, comes out in an authentic way that, you can't tone police me, right? Because we get tone police because when we get passionate about what we're saying, then it's like, oh, they're militant, right? And they get afraid, and it's like, like Bishop, I can't say I haven't hit nobody, but I was, but I was not a fighter or anything like that. But, look at that as our passion and the hurt and the pain that's coming out. And I think for me, it's been really an emotional experience where, I have to really tend to my mental health at this point because of what this is doing and has done to me personally.
Coach.
Yes, sir.
Let me piggyback on something he said, because I know you probably wasn't going this way, but I mess up the whole thing.
No, go, please run.
One of the things that keeps us from people from being able to lament with us is the exceptionalization that people make of certain African Americans. So when you look at somebody and you make them an exception, that's Barack Obama is an exception. He is not the norm. So don't look at Barack Obama. So they said, look, he represents all Black people. No, he doesn't. He represents an exception. And there are many exceptions, but that keeps us then from looking at the whole at any point. We keep looking at certain individuals and then trying to extrapolate. And we don't even go to extrapolation. We just, that's who y'all are. You represent. I don't think any white person, this is my opinion, has ever been asked, can you speak for all white people? But I'm asked regularly, what do y'all think? I can't speak for all Black people. We are not monolithic. I can speak for those I'm in contact with. I can speak with those who are the same socioeconomic class that I am, but I can't speak for all Black people. But that's the problem when we do exceptionalism rather than looking at the group and understanding a wider perspective of what's going on. I'm sorry.
Well,
That's good. Can
I step on that just at the tail end? I think the problem is, and I'm a person, I want to dig everything up at the root. We don't need to talk about symptoms. We need to talk about the root. Because I face the same thing as well all the time. I won't even go into how much and how how people are impressed with the fact that I can articulate something and they can understand it, which is a whole different other conversation. But I will say this: at the root of that is this deeply held belief that goes hundreds and hundreds of years back, of this understanding that don't belong. We don't belong. We shouldn't be able to understand. We shouldn't be in these rooms, and we shouldn't have, we shouldn't be as educated as we are. So when I know one educated person, you, Jocelyn, you are like so great. When all of my friends are young professionals, just like myself, all of them, every one of them. So I don't understand, I don't understand where that comes from, but I do know it's a deep-seated understanding that we typically do not belong. I've long said, I am not the exception, I'm the rule. This is literally all I know. And just about everybody I know is right where I am. And so I think that we have to dig up those old ideas that Black people are unintelligible, or just wouldn't be able to fare in certain circles and certain situations, because all of it is a lie. And the truth of the matter is, those people who started those schools of thought knew that it was untrue. But in order to perpetuate a certain type of society, they spread those things so that it would be commonly believed. And no matter how widely it's believed, it's untrue.
Let me ask this question to you, Bishop, and I'm present this to everybody. Can we truly move forward in this doing culture before we lament?
I don't see how we could move forward without lamenting. If you don't feel with me, then what we end up in America is trying to fix things. We have this, okay. First of all, let me say something. You asked the question. Let me say that I'm thankful, I'm grateful for every white person that's driving what's going on the streets, which are not church people, by the way, that are protesting. I thank them. Let me thank every white person that's attempting to listen to us, to hear what we have to say. I want to affirm that. Then I want to go further and say, but I'm not a problem to be solved. I'm a person to be heard and to be listened to and to come alongside. And then we might be able to move forward. Weep with those who weep, rejoice with those who rejoice. I want to take it a step further, and then I'll stop. But I'm reading a book right now on biblical hospitality. One of the problems is that the nation of Israel was designed to be a welcoming center for people who were struggling, poor, whatever. In the New Testament, Jesus said, when you have done this to the least of these, you've done it unto me. So the church ought to be able to welcome me, even if I'm a stranger, even if I'm a leper, whatever I am, you ought to be able to welcome me on that basis, which means that Christianity isn't even operating the way it ought to operate. That brings us together for you to feel what I'm feeling.
Kemp, if I could jump in there on something Bishop said earlier, and to your question about moving forward. I don't think we can without true lament, because what's going on now, especially in the corporate arena, you have corporations and executives putting out statements about inclusion and diversity, and statements about racial equity, but they're just statements if there's no real true lamenting, right? And it's like, I don't care what statement you put out, but what are you going to do to address those statements? Because what I see is happening is individuals want to jump on a bandwagon because it's the flavor of the day right now.
Come on now.
But when you start pulling back that onion peel and start getting to the core of some systemic stuff, then it's like, hold on, I hold on now. I know it's going to be all of this. So I think some of the intent may be right, but I don't think that most organizations are really prepared to do the work that's going to really need to be done in order for us to move forward. And it's going to start with that lamenting.
But I'm gonna be honest with you, all three of you, that sounds like a really simple solution to a complex problem. Let's just go lament. Let's just go tell me your feelings and tell me how you feel. Because here's the thing, there's some people that are listening to us, they're going to think that. Because as you've taught me, Bishop, we're so caught up in a doing culture. So I got to take all my muscles and I got to take all my stuff and
Sure.
I got to go hammer something.
But Brother Kemp, for the first time in my lifetime, I'm 68 years old. I'll be 69 in March. For the first time in my lifetime, during what happened to George Floyd, I was asked what I felt. I ain't never been asked what I was felt before, and nobody didn't care. All of a sudden, some people are beginning to understand that there are real feelings attached here, and that we feel just like you feel. I'm going to use a different example, but I'm going to talk about the same thing. When you are a leader, I'm a leader. People talk to me as if I have no feelings.
Right.
It's you feel like I'll be like, whoa. Okay, I got some feelings about this too. But if I start expressing my feeling, people get hurt then. You didn't have to say that. Well, you don't have to talk to me like you're talking to me. I'm hurting too. So people are starting to ask the question. They're starting to say, this is new. How do you feel? Number two, do you really want to know how I feel? Or are you looking for some kind of answer so you can move forward? So because I think a lot of times I'm in these meetings all over the place. And when I speak, Brother Kemp, after I speak, Pastor Robert knows it, after I speak, it's silence. Ain't nothing else to be said. Why? Because that ain't where we want to go. And that ain't what I want to talk about. It's like the midnight musical, People, they want me to preach, preach us up. Don't preach us down. Don't talk about sin or whatever. Jesus is good. Get us hyped up. And I say,
shout
sin. Oh, God. So.
Go ahead, Sister Jocelyn.
But it's true. I am certainly not in the seat of Bishop or Pastor Dejanette. But I experienced the exact same thing. But I think the thought is, I'll say to this, and I'm going to say what I was going to say before. As far as being asked how we feel, that is a progressive understanding. Just like we have a more progressive way of looking at femininity and masculinity and asking about being emotionally intelligent and all of those things. That is a concept. I don't say it's new, but it's a newer concept that people, more of the general population, are now starting to kind of embrace, right? So they're asking us how we feel, and the truth is they probably aren't ready, to hear how we feel, because I found that some people just want to be assuaged of their guilt, of the guilt they feel. Or the uncomfortability. They want to know that they're doing a good job. They want a gold star. And I don't pass those out regularly. I'll be honest. So if you don't get a gold star, you don't. So I will say this. One of the ways that we can move forward is a redistribution of power, representation in all industries. And you see some individuals doing that now who have larger platforms because they have much to lose, and they kind of understand it now. And so they are unseating themselves. Some people are. But then you have other people who do not want to give up their power because they understand that power may, I don't want to say feed their family, because they're usually not people who are in dire need. But it is something that sets their family up for generations and generations to come. And so they don't want to redistribute the wealth. They don't want to share their power or unseat themselves. So it's a cause and that's taken up by common people, unseat those who don't want to unseat themselves, and to redistribute power those people who are concerned about the greater good than just those who have historically had power and influence.
And I could just add one more thing on top of that is that, and which I call the golden rule, he who has the gold rules, and those who don't look like us have the gold. So I think it's going to have to be led by some of those who don't look like us, who has the power right now, and the power to change policies and change systemic rules and regulations and processes that has been put up to not allow those people of color to advance. And they are going to have to help lead the charge if it's going to change.
So this is a great segue to bring on a brother who don't look like us. Pastor Kevin's like, hey, that's me. Yes, that is. Pastor Kevin, you have a question or a comment for our panelists. I want to give you an opportunity to ask that.
Yeah, well, I had, thanks, Coach. I know you probably got a little nervous when you saw that Ben brought me on this. That's justified completely. But I had made a comment, and then I'll kind of turn it into a question. I'd love to hear what you all have to say about this. I compare the lack of empathy with my African-American brothers and sisters to victims of maybe sex abuse or trauma or some sort of a violent crime, or even if you know somebody in your life who's had a miscarriage or lost a child, a lot of times there is complete inability to relate to that experience. And so what we do is we minimize it, or we even try to rationalize it away, like it, is somebody's fault, or it didn't happen. I've been in conversations where I've seen that happen. And I think that the inability to relate to the African-American experience is kind of like that, where a lot of white people just don't want to do it, and so they rationalize it away. And so maybe to turn that comment into a question, what can concerned folks like myself or those that are viewing from the white perspective do to kind of help bridge that gap without getting into, hey, this is something I need to do and just check it off my list that I listened to somebody's perspective?
That's a powerful point. And I think you're right. I think that people don't have the ability at certain points to empathize at a certain level when they don't have that experience. But I want to go a step further. I think it is an American trait. I think we have been so intellectualized. This goes back 2,500 years to Greek philosophy. We operate from a Greek mindset rather than a Hebrew mindset. And so I'm going to the book of Lamentations. Coach, can I go to the Bible? I mean, I know there's some Christians on here.
Yeah,
okay.
Please, go right ahead.
I'm going to go to the Bible. Lamentations, we jump to Lamentations 3:22 and 23. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. But there are 64 verses of Lamentations before you get there. There's 64 verses of pain before we jump into and start affirming who God is. Well, that's what we do in America. We want to go from pain to the promised land of trust. And I want to give an analogy, and maybe it will help. Because we are Americans, we have skipped lament. So if pain is Egypt, and in the Bible, from a lament perspective, trust in God is the promised land. Lament is the wilderness. You got to go into the wilderness in order to be able to make it to trust in God. And what we do in America is go from pain to praise. Now, the African-American church didn't do that. We got Negro spirituals, but now we've been co-opted. We're doing the same thing. We just gonna praise him. I'm too blessed to be stressed. I'm gonna praise him anyway. That doesn't mean you praise him without regard to your pain, but in the midst, I got a nevertheless in my situation. I feel like preaching right about now. I gotta, despite the pain in my situation, I gotta, even though there's a cross there, the cross is gonna lead me to where I need to be able to place the glory. I felt something there to my strength and my trust in God. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm back now.
Listen, Bishop, you can keep on running. Before I bring on my sister Lori Zuckerman, anybody have any comments about what the question that Kevin asked?
I think you have to be ready, Kevin, to experience some pushback and maybe even loss of relationship with some individuals who do not see what you see and are unwilling. They see it, but they're unwilling to acknowledge it the way it should be acknowledged. I think that you should ready yourself for the pain of being misunderstood or being outcast because of it. And so I want you to know, I want you to count the cost before you do it, because it's going to cost you. I don't. That's not like a doomsday type of way of addressing it, but it's the truth. There are so many people who their dislike for other individuals is so deep that they don't know how to get out. They don't know how, and they're unwilling. And they're afraid of that more than they are of someone who looks like me. Because who am I if I don't have this? So be ready for that. That's all I would say.
I want to bring on Lori Zuckerman, who has, I think, a really great question to ask. So, Lori, thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for your question.
Well, I didn't realize that asking a question was going to have me up on the screen. So, and in some ways, I think my question has similarity to what we just heard. I'm not familiar with the term lament. I've heard the word, but you seem to be using it in a particular context that is not, I don't have the context for it. And as I listen to you and really try to understand, it sounds like what you're saying is that lament means to be able to speak openly and honestly about your experiences historically and currently of what it is like and has been like, what the pain of being Black in America and in this world has been like, and then to have people like me really hear and empathize and do our work to really try to understand. And I wanted to make sure, since I'm not familiar with the term, I wanted to make sure I got it. So I did. Thank you, Jocelyn. Is there anything I missed? Is there any?
No, Laura, you had it. I've been waiting to meet you.
Got it.
I'm glad to see you on screen. No, you had it nailed. You hit it spot on, right on the head. As a matter of fact, I think you drove that nail right on through the board. The concept that we've been taking is actually a biblical one. It actually deals with the Hebrew people who deal with lament all through the Old Testament. Particularly, there are 51 lament psalms, or more than a third are lament psalm, and it is the vocalization of pain, of suffering, of exile, and it really raises three questions. Number one, why? Number two, how did this happen? Number three, how long do I have to put up with this? When you deal with those three questions, it begins to bring a certain level of pain. And to the last question, the person who asked the question, it's the ability to be able to sit with pain, not try to solve it too quick, not try to fix it, not to feel it, to sit there, because when you feel it, it's going to carry you in a direction. And one more thing I'll say, the reason we don't do much of it is because we have a view that suffering is evil.
Mm-hmm.
Some suffering is evil. It flows from evil. But some suffering is a part of the process of growth and carries you somewhere.
Bishop, if I could say, I was thinking of Paul, and he said he was buffeted, right? But he found that God's grace is sufficient. I think that's just what I was thinking about while you were talking. I think that you're right. You took every word out of my mouth I was getting ready to say. It is, we think of suffering as a very, something that's bad, but it teaches you, that pain teaches you how to move forward. Sometimes that pain, when you experience pain, especially in this particular context, when we're working to create change for not just ourselves, but for generations after us, we feel the pain, we lament over it. But that pain, at least in my understanding, is teaching me that where I'm going is worth it. So even though I feel this pain, even though I have to carry it and I have to live with it, I live with it every single day of my life, it's worth it. So whatever's hurting me, just know it's coming. I know the pain's coming, but I shouldn't stop from moving in that direction. I should continue. So at least that's the way I see it, is that the pain is showing me that I'm going in the right direction. Because if I can embrace the pain long enough and deal with it, eventually I'm going to begin to heal. You know, I'm going to become immune to this pain in a way that will allow me to keep moving in the right direction for people who are coming after me.
And I agree with that. And I thank Lori for bringing the question out, because, been knowing Lori for a while and working with her in this space, and what she said is what she's been doing. So, she's been lamenting all along, just not knowing the phraseology in which we're using that word in the context. And there's many Loris out there. And that's how we're, I believe, starting to at least move the needle, because of those who are willing to make themselves vulnerable and also show their wounds too, and even show their lack of understanding and wanting to understand. But, the proof still is in the pudding, when it's not all about what we say, is about what we do. And what actions are we putting into place. So I just wanted to thank Lori for that.
That's good stuff. That's y'all are hitting that. I'm so glad to be on with y'all. Y'all good. There's a 4-step process in the Psalms for dealing with lament. Number 1, turn from the pain to the person of God. How long, O Lord? After how long you go to the Lord? Turn from pain to person. 2, complain. We've been taught not to complain, but in the Bible, they complain all over the place. Job, everybody complaining. You ain't treating me right. And then ask God for help. And number 4, then state your trust in him. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercy. So I turn from pain to the person of God. I complain, I ask, and I state my trust. That's the 4-step process.
We have one more that I want to get to. Minister Pauletta Hatchett is going to come, and this is going to probably be our last one. Then we're going to get ready to wrap up. But Minister, if you can go ahead and ask your question, and thanks so much for your question.
I'm trying to find my question. Okay. My question was in general regarding how much for people who, maybe I should read my question specifically, but my thought was, how much of our interaction with others is really for people to understand where African Americans are? What is the relationship between being desensitized to pain and realizing the pain and being willing to rub up against and touch the forces of death that we experience on a regular basis? My thoughts are just wondering about this, because it's just like people sit in a church all together and hear the same word. But some people see and some don't, some hear and some won't. So I just would like to know your thoughts on that, as well as this issue of corporate lament and creating a space in different venues across different domains, even for that to occur.
Prophetess, good to see you. Thanks for getting on
Hi,
there.
Bishop. Good to see
I'm gonna, I see a continuum in this regard. On one end, I see anger. On the other end, I see denial. Some people are angry because if they really face their pain and figure out they can't control it, it'll make you angry. And so a lot of folks are angry. On the other end, if you refuse to face your pain because you feel it's going to undo you, you're in denial. So you have to really create what I'm starting to call a Christian realism and authenticity that the great reformer Martin Luther said that the theology of the cross calls a thing what it is. You got to be able to call a thing what it is. Call a spade. We would say in our culture, you got to call it what it is. Well, we don't want to call it what it is. We want to try to solve something, and we ain't even talked about what it is. So that's been one of my statements. Really, people are just talking to me now and saying, "Well, Bishop." I say, it is what it is. We got to face what it is, and then we can respond.
I think also, and if I remember correctly, Prophetess Pauletta, I think we used to be neighbors. But what I will say is the difference between being leaning into the pain and being desensitized is not allowing yourself to become consumed by it. I think that yes, we were we were neighbors. I think that the problem is we are so used to seeing people die on camera now, and that is not. I don't personally believe that is by accident. It is in order to make us desensitized to suffering, and to think that it's just commonplace. And the truth of the matter is, as Bishop said, there's some suffering that is meant to help you grow, and there's some suffering that comes from evil. But I think if we can find the balance of acknowledging, as Bishop just said, what is going on and calling it what it is and lamenting over it and using that pain to move forward, balance that with an understanding that even though I feel this pain, there is still joy in life, in living. There is still love. There is still hope. If we can balance those things, then we can move forward. But if we allow that pain to envelop us, then it becomes something else. It becomes a different type of monster of a different type of magnitude, and that's a whole other thing. But I think we have to find the balance in our humanity to both hold that pain and embrace the joy. And if we're just gonna go with the flow with Bishop, the joy of the Lord is our strength. So if I am just going to live with this pain, and this pain, it can fuel me for a while, but I'm going to run out. If I have joy, though, I have strength. So I think we have to find that necessary balance.
That's good, Sister Jocelyn.
They both articulated it very, very well. And I say ditto to that. But in my own words, I really think, though, being open to have the conversation is key. And not only having the conversation, but being prepared for what the conversation is going to lead to. And I don't think a lot of people know where the conversation is going to go and how it's going to start affecting everybody at that table, because you have to have a diverse table in order for the conversation to be meaningful. But when you have that conversation, if there's no relationship, I don't know how far the conversation is going to go, because if you don't know somebody's heart, where they're coming from, that could prevent you from going further. But just being prepared and having it facilitated well, because I think that's going to be the key, because you'll get to the point where you come to an impasse and feelings start getting hurt. And we know what happens when you're in a conversation with blacks and whites, and then the white is the white person gets offended and start crying, and then everyone turns to that person and forget all about the conversation. It's like, bring the tissue, cry, but this is stuff really has to come out and really have some authentic conversation so that we can get to the root where we all are.
Pastor Robert, you and Sister Jocelyn is knocking the ball out the park. There is a theologian by the name of Robert Fowle, and he said this one time: you can't do theology with enemies. You see, when you try to talk about something heavy, it's got to be with friends, because after it's all over, we can still walk forward together. But if you're not, you try to do that with enemies, you splinter, it breaks apart. You don't get very far. Folks are hurt. You're trying to clean up the mess. You're going through, then after a while, you've lost what it is you were trying to do. Right. So I think that's what both of you are hitting on the head so powerfully.
I want to take one last question from Robert. Robert, thank you so much for your question. We want to give you a moment to ask it and to get some feedback to it. Thank you, Robert.
All right, well, I'm just going to read what I put in the chat. No matter how much I learn and try to understand the Black experience, I did not have the Black experience. Therefore, I doubt I will ever truly feel the depths of your feelings. How do we move forward as one community to solve problems, knowing that we all come from different perspectives? And I'll just give one illustration. I know somebody that was born Catholic, and in his 20s, he converted to Judaism. And he said, I didn't have your experience. You know, there's so many things that he couldn't relate to. But at some point in time, you know, there was an attempt to, I guess, catch up, but you can never make up for the time you didn't have.
Hey, Robert, I've been waiting to meet you. So good to see you. You know, I think you hit a really important point. And the point is, I can never approximate or appropriate somebody else's experiences, but I can become respectful. And if I can become respectful, I can create some understanding, some connection. I look at that basically as a pastor, because I'm reading a Hebrew Bible and I keep trying to make it American. It's not American, it's Hebrew. I can never become Hebrew. I can never move back and have that culture, but I can become appreciative of the culture and the value system and the logic behind it, and seek to interact at that level.
I think I would also add just what Bishop said before. We can only move together if we're friends. It's who are your friends? Who are you engaging? Who are you sharing time with and actually internalizing their understandings, listening to them and turning it over in your mind? When you change your friend group, or not change, but, you know, kind of mold your friend group into who you would like to become, it begins to change you. So look at your friend group, look at the people that you're spending time with. And if you want to empathize, and empathize means I feel. It's not just I understand, it's I feel. So if you want to empathize, you have to, some part of your life, surround yourself with people who are not like you, or people who look like me, if you want to know more about the Black experience.
And I agree with that. And it works the same way on the flip side. I couldn't tell you what it means to be white. But I could tell you what it means to me to be Black. But for us to have that authenticity in relationship and learn from one another and walking together down the same path and being there, whether we understand or not, but just being there the best that we can from our ability, from our sphere of influence, to do what we can do as individuals to help one another. I think that's the key to moving forward.
I want to take this time just to thank everybody for being on with us. I thank our panelists for their time and their service. And just thank you, everyone, for just coming on and being able to listen, to understand. This is what it's going to take, and this is part of us doing the work. We'll be with you again next month, the third Wednesday of every month, and we'll continue this conversation on what it really means to feel and to lament together. Next week, we'll be having our next steps to connection versus collision, where we'll break down kind of in a small group format to talk about what we discussed today in more of a group environment in a small group level. And so just thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time. Thank you for what you have given to us and the educational aspects of this. So as we always end with our love of our city. And so let me say this too. There is going to be a survey that's going to be sent out to everybody that registered. Please fill it out. We want to know how we can continue to thrive and to help Akron get better at these type of discussions and conversations. So as we get ready to end, everybody knows how this goes. Bishop, you've been here for a long time. You know how this goes, right, Bishop?
They said something about love Akron.
Okay, so
but don't forget, Ben is a new father. I don't know if he could even talk about love Akron right now. But
everybody claps when you say I'm a new father, and the best line is for the 4th time.
Okay, well, it's still new. Love Ben. I mean, love Akron.
Well, hey, I'm gonna be talking to Bishop right after this because we're gonna talk about what does this corporate lament mean, and having a time, whether it's just on Zoom, for us to really just lament together as a city. I'm looking to try to get that going next month. So I know Bishop has nothing but time for Brother Kemp and for Love Akron, and so we're gonna make that happen the best we can. But thank you all again so much. And if you don't do anything else today, make sure that you
love Akron.
Love Akron.
We love you guys. Thank you so much for all that have joined on our discussion. And man, it's this is it, guys. Like this is why we exist, is Love Akron. Please, like Coach was saying, there's 2 different links, I guess this way or this way, in the chat where you can actually fill out the survey. Please let us know. We want to do the best job that we can with this, and to make sure that we're serving our city well. So yeah, man, I don't know how to follow any of that up because that was awesome. So I'm just going to turn on some music and say, have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good one.